But right now, very happy to have our friend Thom Hartmann back on, host, of course, the Thom Hartmann program. You hear noon to 3 p.m. Eastern time on this very channel. New York Times best-selling author and the Hartmann Report on Substack, hartmannreport.com. Sign up for it. I get articles every day. It's great stuff. Thom, thanks for making time. I know you said 3 hours of radio. I watched, it's funny, Substack Live, I've actually watched some of your show because it's right on my desktop. So that's actually a great thing. And
That's
maybe
great.
next time I'll try to do it with you, but I was afraid today because I've only done a few. I didn't want to screw up the show because we're live here. So I didn't want to screw up
Yeah.
this show. I didn't care about Substack Live screwing it up, but
Well,
thanks
I
for
can
being
figure
on.
out how to open the Substack on my phone here and have it in front of me, but I'm not sure how to get you into it. So we'll have to
Well,
figure
then
it
you'd have to send a request to me and then we would do it. But the best thing is we'll pre-record it one day and then I'll be able to just take the audio and play that on the show and the Substack Live at the same time. But
out.
Thom, before you came on, we were talking about the 3 U.S. citizen children from 2 different families that were deported.
Yeah.
And it began with someone on the right calling in and defending it without even, none of us have all the facts right now. But what's disturbing is that the lawyers for both families, see, these families were checking in. They were part of a program. They were checking in the way they were supposed to. And that the lawyers said we were not allowed to have access to our clients. And family members called in trying to connect with the mother and their guardians here in the U.S. They could have taken care of the U.S. citizens, but the Trump administration did not care. They quickly whisked them out of the country, and they deported U.S. citizens here. Even a Trump-appointed judge, raised concerns they were deported U.S. citizens without due process. They
Yeah.
don't care about anything, not the law, not the Constitution, nothing. And this is
No,
where we are. So what's your reaction to this one?
yeah, and Thom Hartmann is now trying to blame this on the mothers. This is parenting 101, we were going to deport the mothers, and so the kids wanted to go with them. Well, maybe. I mean, I would believe that if there had been a hearing, if they'd been in
Right.
front of a judge, then I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, this happened to my cousin, um, or niece, I guess. No, it's my cousin's daughter. I don't know what you call that.
Got deported?
She married a guy who was here without documentation. They had 3 kids. In fact, I think they have 5 now. And he owned a little business, a little Mexican restaurant. And this was during the Obama administration. And he got busted. It was a traffic ticket, and they discovered that he wasn't
Oh.
here legally, and he was being deported. We even involved Bernie Sanders. Even called ICE and see what he could do, and there was nothing they could do. So the whole family just moved to Mexico. They've been living in Mexico for the last 8, 10 years.
Well, that was a family
But
decision,
they
though, after
had
some.
but during that time, I mean, one of the memes that's going around now, in fact, I've gotten a couple of, snotty people sending them to me in response to some of the things that I say, which is that the meme is, Obama deported tens of thousands of people without any due process. Those were all people who actually weren't like technically deported. I mean, they were caught at the border and just turned back. That's a completely different thing. And when my cousin or niece or whatever she is, when her husband was deported, they went before a judge. I mean, there was a process, and
Sure.
he didn't get thrown in the slammer for 6 months, and all that kind of nonsense. They were given, a couple of weeks, and they bought an airplane ticket to Mexico City.
Well, Tom, you may not have seen this, but Trump posted a picture of the 2-year-old baby wearing a little bib that said MS-13 on it. Apparently, the 2-year-old baby was actually an MS-13. The baby had tattoos on his hands.
No
On one
doubt.
hand, it was like Dora the Explorer, and the other was MS-13 forever. That kind of stuff. So, yeah, I want to be honest. Like, that's not even that far afield. Trump posted a doctored fake photo of the guy's hand, and
That's
it said,
right.
and they wrote MS-13 on it. And they
Kill
tried to play
100%.
games saying we were translating the tattoos. They were not. One was a cross. But his supporters and Newsmax were saying they were not saying there's a translation. They said, look at his hand. They were showing the picture. It says MS-13 on it. They were doing exactly what Trump wanted. They fabricated evidence that he knew his supporters would repeat it to everybody, that his hand says MS-13,
Yeah.
that they're hiding his hand because it says it. It doesn't, no, it didn't say MS-13 on it, you idiots. We would have heard that from day one. It does not have it. The pictures of his hands with Senator Van Hollen were amplified and blown up, and it does not say MS-13. No one, it's
It
like
is.
having it, you're in the mafia, you tattoo mafia on your hand. Who's going to do that? But,
Yeah.
you
It
know,
is. It is the president of the United States lying to the people of the United States and to the world to justify committing a crime.
Mhm.
I mean, it's and define the Supreme Court now that he's done it. I mean, when you think about that
And that
in
this
those terms, it's really pretty friggin' radical here. I mean, Dean, this is really way beyond the pale.
how do you see this ending? Yeah, before you came on, I was talking about I have an author of a book on in a couple of days about how tyrannies end. His name is Marcel Dursus. He's a professor in Germany, but the book is obviously in English, came out last year. And it got some awards. It wasn't like a huge seller here in the States, but it got some awards. And I was reading it. And 70% of people who were dictators since World War II or Democratic elected officials who try to become dictators, 70% end either exile, death, or imprisonment.
Yeah,
All three are fine options for
I
me. I mean,
think
I don't know
so.
if I can get to pick one. We can
I
have a
agree.
pool. What's the option you want? But I could
But
see a Nuremberg trial situation when this is over.
yeah, in most cases though, that was years after they did a lot of damage. I mean, Duterte killed 10,000 people. Bolsonaro killed, lots of people and imprisoned people. Pinochet had what, 16 years, 18 years, something like that in Chile. He killed a lot of people. I mean, yeah, it doesn't end well for them typically, but the damage that they do in the meantime can be extraordinary. I've been playing with the idea of writing an op-ed suggesting that we're going to need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission like South Africa had, because
Hmm.
this involves not just Trump, but the entire Republican Party. Going back 10 years now, the entire Republican Party has been standing, or for 9 years, has been standing with him, has been supporting these lies, has been following step by step and facilitating all these things. And there has to be accountability, but I don't think anybody seriously thinks we're going to be putting Republican legislators, that Mitch McConnell's going to go to prison. And so I would settle for a confession and, like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, and then let's just move on, with a small number of people going to jail, like, Trump, um, you know,
Right.
and some of the people directly
Uh,
around him. I mean, keep in mind, John Mitchell went to prison. He was
oh
Nixon's
yeah.
attorney general, and I don't think
Morgan
Pam
Liddy.
Bondi probably even knows that, you know.
Right. The. I would like to see a people's tribunal like in Batman, and then we have them walk out onto ice, and if they can make it across the river, then they're free. But if they don't, because they
Ah,
never make it across,
throw them in the
they fall
water,
in
and
the
if
river.
they if they
That's how good.
float,
Yeah, if
they're
they
innocent.
swim, right.
No
If
witch
they sink,
trial.
they're innocent. If they swim, they're witches, and then we have to kill them. Right. So I like these are fun games, folks. Isn't this fun? It's so much better. Celebrate 100 days. And just so it's clear, I am not in any way advocating any violence towards Donald Trump or to anyone. I would
Yes.
like to have due process. He deserved due process before he is then forced to walk on the ice. That would be at least fair about that. So you wrote about something else very distressing, and I wrote about it over the weekend myself. I wrote about it Friday or Saturday about Judge Dugan being arrested. And I put in my article, and I'm on your show in a few days. What I noted in my article is that Freedom House had just written an article literally 4 days before about autocrats around the world punishing lawyers who represent people the regime doesn't like and arresting judges. And that was before the arrest of the judge. Trump is following that playbook to a T.
Yeah.
Everything, China, Russia, Turkey, Myanmar, all Sudan. He is following all of it. Like I don't know if he gets it instinctively or if Stephen Miller understands it, but these guys are following the dictator tyrant playbook.
Yeah, and Hannah Dugan is the second judge who was arrested last week. The first was in New Mexico, and it was both the judge and his wife were arrested, thrown into jail, and he was a retired judge. And the deal was he had a fairly large home with a separate detached house as part on his property, and that house was empty. And he had three immigrants living in that house in exchange for work that they were doing, fixing it up and fixing up his house, just, doing handyman and construction stuff in exchange for room and board. And, they came in and they busted the three immigrants and then they threw him and his wife in jail. So it's getting real here. It's getting real, real fast. I doubt
And that
that
sounds like something out of World War II, doesn't it? I mean, where
it, it,
people
it,
like,
it
do you
does.
have Jews in your house, that type of thing?
Yeah,
And you're going to be accused of harboring the enemy, which in that case in Germany was anyone who was Jewish, or any other enemies of the state they dub, socialists, communists, gypsies, whatever it might have been.
Yeah, it's shades of Anne Frank. It really is.
Yeah.
And I doubt that we'll ever get to the point where the wealthy white employers who employ a lot of these kind of people are ever going to be nailed. But if they can go after a Hispanic judge, the judge in New Mexico was Hispanic himself, although he was a U.S. citizen. Um, and if they can go after, a county judge, they can go after anybody. And by the way,
And
when they went after the county judge, they didn't even have an arrest warrant signed by a judge. I mean, it was an administrative warrant. Which really isn't a warrant. It doesn't have the legal requirements of the Fourth and Fifth Amendment. So,
so in your article, you made the very important point that this was all about a message they were sending by arresting the judge. And what's that message?
well, and not just arresting the judge, Pam Bondi's performance on Fox News immediately thereafter, we are coming
Mhm.
after you if you don't, do what we want, basically. And the message was, pretty straightforward, Dean. Trump was saying, I have control of the Article 1 branch of government. There's only three branches of government. And then there's this fourth kind of ancillary thing that we refer to as the fourth estate or the press, which is referenced in the First Amendment and elsewhere. But basically, Trump is saying, I've got control of Congress, both the House and the Senate. The Republicans in both bodies are so terrified of me that last week, Don Bacon came out and said, I think this tariff stuff is being done a little too hastily, or words to that effect. And within 24 hours, Don Bacon was talking about how he's going to have to resign and not run for reelection. I mean, the word came down. Elon's going to destroy you. How dare you speak against, the dynastic god Trump.
Right.
And so number one, he's got Congress. That means that the only three things left that could limit his power are the courts, the press, and you and I in the streets, the people in the streets. And I mean, we're the press, actually, you and I, but the media anyway. And the people in the streets. And so now he's trying to nail down both the media and the judiciary, the Article 3 branch, by threats and intimidation and lawsuits. And I think it's quite successful. His message, when he arrested Judge Dugan, the message was to every other judge in America: be afraid, be very afraid. I can come after you too. There's nothing that you have no insulation whatsoever. And it's funny, this morning when I did this rant on my program at 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, at noon Eastern time, in the middle of my rant, I said, and by the way, I think he wasn't just intending this message to go to county clerks or county judges or even state level judges. I think he wants this message to be heard by Supreme Court justices, that he wants them
Mhm.
as scared of him as everybody else. And we went to break, and as we came back from the break, I've got a monitor in the studio, and it had CNN on, and the chyron was Carolyn Levitt, Trump spokeswoman Carolyn Levitt says Trump willing to imprison Supreme Court justices, or words to that effect.
Right.
She just held that press conference and said, yeah, he'll go after the Supreme Court. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like, this is how fast things are happening. And
They're listening to your show. They're like, that's a good idea. Tom, it's a good idea. Have Carolyn Levitt out there, Blonde Mengele, go out there. Everyone has a different nickname for her. Yes, she said, Steve Doocy from Fox News asked the question, would you go after federal judges, Supreme Court? And she gave this roundabout answer. It's up to DOJ. But then at the end, she goes, of course, anyone who violates the law, we're going to go after whoever they are. So now they're going to go after people. This is, and the Supreme Court deserves it, because they said the president has the power to talk to DOJ directly and tell them who they want prosecuted. And that's completely immune from any kind of
yeah,
examination. So if
it's
Trump
crazy.
orders, Chief Justice Roberts to be arrested and put in prison, he's got no one to blame but himself. He literally has no one to blame but himself. And then they're going to fill the seat with some MAGA person. I'm chatting with our friend Thom Hartmann. So Tom, look, I mean, it greatly concerns me when you're going to arrest judges for political reasons. And I read the affidavit by the FBI agent, and it was, is there enough evidence to charge someone? There could be, but it's not in that affidavit. I can tell you that. They have other evidence. And to
You're talking
remind
Judge
people,
Dugan.
yeah, Judge, this incident happened a week before. So they rushed in a week. They did no investigation. They literally drafted this thing up to make a spectacle. And they arrested her publicly, as
Yeah.
opposed to having it reach out and volunteer surrender, which she's got a lawyer. That's what you usually do. They wanted to be a spectacle. They wanted people to see a judge being arrested, to send that message to other people, just like you're saying. And it's deeply, deeply concerning. And the judge, they keep saying, like, I have a clip. I could play Bondi, but I'll just tell you what she said. Oh, the judge told him to go out the back door. Well, that's not in the affidavit. I can tell you that. It's not in the affidavit says a court clerk said the judge told to indicate to them to go to the jury room, which is, we don't know what the conversation was. We don't know if the lawyer said, hey, my client's really upset about the person outside from ICE. Can I go speak to him somewhere quietly? And the judge said, yeah, go sit back there. We don't know that. They're making it sound like the judge told her to go out there. And then they're like, the judge told him to go out the back door. No, the exit was into a public hallway where DEA agents immediately identified him. That's in the actual affidavit. Immediately recognized him and called and said, he's here, the guy. There was no judge. The judge didn't take them to a basement and sneak them out of judge's only elevator. The judge is on the bench. They went go in the other room and then they walk out into the public hallway. There's literally, federal agents are right there, and the judge knew there were federal agents outside and inside her courtroom. So it is bullshit from a legal point of view. Unless there are more facts, I don't know. It is bullshit from a legal point of view. And
Yeah.
that's a term of legal art, bullshit.
Yes.
But,
Of course. And a fine,
so,
and one that increasingly
right.
describes the actions of this administration on a virtually daily basis. That's
I talked to, I've spoken to two law firms in the last couple of weeks because Arab American Heritage Month, but that's not why. Because once in a while I get called, but it's because these bigger firms in Jersey are pushing back against Trump's DEI program, and so that I come up on the thing. I'm Arab American. I used to be a lawyer. There's very few of us who are former lawyers who can also tell jokes. So, and both these firms have been standing up to Trump, and they're very proud. They're big firms, in fact, and I told them both, thank you for not compromising your values,
yeah.
because history is going to look back at your firms like yours. And one of them is representing Harvard in the case against Trump right now. They were in court, literally court today, some of the lawyers. And this is vitally important. We're going to look back at the collaborators, and we're going to look back at those who stood up for the rule of law and the Constitution.
Yeah.
And history will note it for what it's worth. If we win, if we lose, history it won't be noted. So, Tom, what do you make? Earlier in the show, I was talking about Donald Trump's first 100 days, polling showing the lowest of any president at 100 days. We're talking about 40%, 41% in a bunch of polls. People strongly disapprove of Trump, way over strongly approve. What do you make of it? Is it significant? Is it meaningful?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that, the thing that I keep hearing is I didn't vote for this. It's become like a cliche that Trump humpers and Trump voters, particularly the unaffiliated voters who decided that, maybe he'll lower the price of eggs. They didn't vote to have 250,000 federal employees laid off. They didn't vote for, gutting Medicaid. They didn't vote for closing rural hospitals. They didn't vote for ending Meals on Wheels. They didn't vote for, shutting down research programs on childhood cancers. Nobody voted for this crap that they're pursuing. And I get it that there's some hardcore ideologues who are okay with it. And I get it that probably half of America really doesn't even have any idea what's going on. They're just listening to music and sports and, not paying attention to the news. But they're going to start paying attention in about 2 weeks. They're going to start seriously paying attention. Somewhere between May 5th and May 10th, the proverbial crap is going to hit the fan, because that's when, we're going to just run out of stuff. There hasn't been a ship coming from China in a week or two now. And Japan too is withholding stuff. And I read yesterday over 1,000 items on Amazon have gone up an average of 30%.
Wow.
I had two people call into the show today saying that they were buying things on Temu, and they'd buy like this $20 thing, and when they check out, it was a $90 bill, and they look at the bill and there's a $45 shipping fee, or tariff fee or whatever added to it, import fee as it's called. And that kind of stuff is going to get people's attention really fast. And by the time that happens, I mean, we're already about what, 3 weeks into it, so there's this 3 week pause in deliveries is already kind of baked into the thing. If it goes another couple of weeks, and I suspect it will, because Trump is just incapable of admitting error, it's going to get really bad. And now you've got, Jamie Dimon, 2 weeks ago, he was saying, I think there's like a 60% chance of a recession. Yesterday or the day before, he said, I think one of the best case outcomes is it's just a recession. I mean, it's like,
I think we might be, well, we get a jobs report on Friday for the previous month, but it's kind of misleading because it actually measures from the middle of the month before to the other month. So it's not, it's really going to be the next jobs report, the one we get in June for May, that we're going to really see if there's a spike or not on unemployment. I've talked to various people in business who have mid-sized businesses here in New York, and they deal with people who are like upper middle class or wealthy, and those people are pulling back as well now. So we already saw spending drying up on lower income Americans. That's, you see the reporting from credit card companies. You've seen it from some of the retailers that deal with that. So now it's everywhere. And I just saw today that home sales in March were the lowest since 2009. It's the lowest since 2009, folks, in home sales.
yeah, and
That's where we're
2009
going
was right
today.
after the housing crash. I mean, it's
Exactly.
like,
That's
yeah.
it.
And
What a weird time, right?
I'm seeing this too. I don't know if you are, but we got a call a week and a half ago from Ron. Ron, my business
Sure, I
man.
know, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he owns this little ad agency that sells the advertising on my program. And he was like, the advertisers are pulling back. And it's not just your
Huh.
show, it's all the show. He represents like 10 shows. And he's like,
Hmm.
they're just pulling back right across the board because they're anticipating a recession. And so we're down in advertising revenue for the year now. And then also on Substack, I noticed that, the regular growth of people who subscribe, my newsletter is free Monday through Friday. The
Right.
Saturday report and the Sunday book excerpt only partially go out to people who don't pay for a subscription. And then there's a few other things that people get who subscribe. We do a monthly Zoom call and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, you don't have to pay me to get 95% of everything that I send out. In
But if
fact,
you want Tom to be nice to you, you have to pay him. Just so you know, I have to send him money
yeah,
after every
but
interview.
it's
Okay.
it's not something that I push real hard. I mean, it's
I
just
know.
it's a little gravy
I
on the
understand.
side. Just like with you. And
Sure.
and what I've noticed is that, it was, every day I'd get two or three new subscribers, or three or four or whatever, and that's just cut in half or more. I'm seeing,
I've
and
seen the same thing.
yeah, and I'm guessing it's because people are just like, hey, I've got to start husbanding my money. I've got to start pinching my pennies.
That's the reality. When you're gonna, if you, it's the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty freaks out Wall Street. It undermines businesses. How do you plan for a future when there's tariffs one day and not the next? Trump, literally in the Time magazine vomit of words, which you need like a Ouija board to figure out what he's saying. The few things that were clear. One of my favorite things he said, Tom, was that he said, I made 200 trade deals. And the reporter said, 200 trade deals? Yeah, 200. There's 190 countries. Okay.
Right.
So he renegotiated the deal. Like he's done so many deals, he's gone back and renegotiated 10 more. But he talked about being, I'm not kidding. He said he would be happy with a 30 to 50% tariff in effect next year at this time. That's awful.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, we're going to get rid of income tax. No, you're not going to get rid of income tax. That's not going to happen. We're going to pay a regressive tax, which that's what a tariff is. Everyone knows that. A regressive tax, plus you're still going to pay your income tax, and the wealthy are going to get the tax cut. That's where the tax is going to be. And services are going to be cut down at the same time because they're justifying this. This is the worst package ever. Like there's the honeymoon package, whatever. This is the Trump package. It's screw us all over. I'm buying tomatoes on layaway now, Tom. Like I'm 3 payments away from getting my tomato at a Whole Foods. It's in the case. I can see it. I'm like, don't sell that tomato. I want tomato on my salad. That's where we are.
Yeah, we
So
really are.
it's
And I mean, you can build a really strong case for a country having a strong manufacturing base. And I've been building that case for years. I've written 2 books on it.
right.
Adam Smith made this point, and this is why manufacturing is so important. In Wealth of Nations back in 1776, he said that if you take a tree limb that's laying on the ground in the forest, which has no intrinsic value, and you apply
Right.
human labor to it, a jackknife, and turn it into an axe handle, you now have something that has value. It's now worth $10, and it will be for generations. You can pass it down in generations. And that added value, that tree limb that went from having a value of maybe 5 cents to having a value of $10 because of the application of human labor, that is an increase in the wealth of the entire nation. And the only thing that increases the wealth of nations is manufacturing. If you give me a back rub and I give you a haircut, if we exchange services or we buy services from each other, that does not increase wealth in the nation at all. We're just moving money around. But when we manufacture things, when we take raw materials and apply labor to them, and as a result have increase their value, you're actually building wealth for the nation. And that's how China has gone from being dirt poor. When I lived in China in November of 1986, it was just dirt poor. I was in Beijing for a month studying acupuncture at the Acupuncture Institute there, and I could buy a nice four-course lunch for less than 3 cents US.
Wow.
It was just dirt poor, and everybody was heating with little coal briquettes, and it was in November. You'd only heat one room in the house and all this kind of stuff. I mean, and this was the year before Tiananmen, or maybe 2 years before. And then what's his name? Deng said, we're going to do what Alexander Hamilton told George Washington America should do. We're going to subsidize, manufacturers. We're going to become the manufacturing floor for the world. We're going to use non-tariff, trade restrictions and tariffs to build a domestic manufacturing industry. And it's now, they're as rich as we are now. I mean, we're
the second economy in the world.
Yeah, and I mean they're building like 1,000 miles of high-speed rail every year. I mean they're just like zooming past us, and it's
Well, I mean,
so we
the
need
next
to
thing,
be
Tom, is they
doing
want.
manufacturing here, but this is not the way to do it.
No, and to me, I agree with you. Like if you did a plan, but if you're going to do manufacturing, if you want to bring back, you would be specific to what you want to bring back.
Sure.
And then you would do tax laws to go along with it and maybe subsidies to go along, whatever.
Sure.
This is the most whimsical, throw it at the wall. Nothing makes sense. We've got a madman. We have King George as president. He's a convicted felon. He shouldn't be there. He should be in a prison cell. That's where he belongs. And he's stuck in the and look, I mean, I don't know how bad the economy is going to get. I'm going to be holding up signs on the side of the road. We'll do rants for food. We'll do political rants. Say, give me a hammer. What do you want to hear about? I'll do a rant on anything. That's because look, all of us are affected. We're at SiriusXM Radio. We're a subscription-based model. And when the economy gets tough, it's the kind of things where you're like, okay, same thing, cable news, and people go, okay. So we're going to see how, well, I just hope that it's a subtle slowdown. I don't root for a recession or a depression for political gain for Democrats. I never have. I never will. I didn't like when Bill Maher did it years ago. I'm like, that's not the right thing. Good people are going to suffer over that. But we'll see where this goes. And I wish we had someone who knew what they were doing in the White House. Even today, Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, who's looked at as Howard Lutnick is gone. Like, it's funny. I don't even know where Lutnick is. He was in the media all the time. He was the Secretary of Commerce. He was like a Wall Street bro guy. It's like, everything's going to be fine, bro. Like that kind of stuff. He's like gone right now. But Bessent was on saying, well, China should come talk to us because, it's not sustainable for them to stay with these tariffs. Yeah, it is sustainable for an autocratic dictator country to do that because their people can't do anything. It's not sustainable for us, not sustainable for Republican Party politically. And he's just doing Trump talking points because a reasonable person doesn't say that bullshit. They say, we're trying to talk. We're trying China against it today. We have no talks going on. They keep rubbing in Trump's face.
Well, the problem
wait till they undermine the dollar as a currency. They're going to continue to undermine that U.S. dollar as a currency.
Going back to your old profession, the reason why for centuries, I mean, for probably millennia, court jesters were tolerated. In fact, were embraced. The comedian in the court was they were the one person who had legal immunity, who could say anything about the king. Oh, I suppose there were probably some boundaries, but could say things, that would give the king insight into what's really going on out there, how people are really feeling, and not have their head chopped off. Trump doesn't have that. Trump does not have a court
Wow.
jester. He doesn't have a truth teller in his administration. He's got a bunch of people who are terrified of him. He's got a bunch of people who are just, they're looking for their next gig on Fox News or whatever. And they're desperate to just suck up to him. And so he's getting, his worst impulses are being validated rather than being questioned. And I think it's going to end in disaster for him, for our country. I suppose the one
Hmm.
upside to this, Dean, is that he's screwing up so badly that his plan to become a dictator, I think, is going to be short-circuited by his own incompetence. I mean, if he had been
I
a little
hope
more
so.
competent, he actually might have been able to really and truly end American democracy without our even realizing it. But now, I think he's going to have a real challenge.
The, when you talk about the challenge he has and how he did this without any planning, the I knew there was a plan with the executive orders because they knew the courts were going to stop a lot. And what they were going to do was to use that to delegitimize the courts. And what's concerning is that succeeded among Republicans, not among all Americans. When you saw the polls over the weekend, one that really jumped out at me, I think it was well over 60% said he was overreaching and trying to grab more power. When you take
Mm.
Republicans out of that mix, we're like at 70 something percent of Americans going, I don't know what he's doing, but I don't like it. But on the GOP base, they're fine with that. They're the idea of the judiciary is overreaching, and he is. They're trying to reimagine America. They're trying to re-envision this country, it completely different than our Constitution, our rule of law, our due process. And the worst part is a big chunk of Republicans will go along with that, and I don't know why. For the life of me, I don't know why they don't like our system. They love it when it stops Joe Biden. When the court stopped Joe Biden, they were all so. Is it just partisan charade going on, or do you think deep down they have an antagonism to our Constitution and the rule of law?
I think it's a human thing, Dean. You look at country after country that has gone authoritarian, and typically they go authoritarian with the help and approval of the majority of the population, at least initially.
Mm-hmm.
We're all, oh, who was it? Ram Dass once made this observation. He said, even the most brutal Southern sheriff who likes to beat people with an axe handle, deep down inside, he's a scared child, and he just wants to be loved. And I think that that's true of all of us, it's just kind of a human thing. And as scared children, we want daddy, or mom, but typically dad is the one who's viewed as the protector. And we want dad to protect us. We want daddy to be the one who's going to say everything's going to be fine, don't worry, I'll take care of it, just like he did when we were 5 years old. And
Right.
and um, and so Trump comes along and plays that card just like Hitler did, just like Mussolini did, just like Duterte did, just like all these guys do. And there's a large percentage of people who are, some are scared and they want daddy. Some are like, well, hey, it's fine with me. Some are men who think, everything should be hierarchical, so it's just fine with them. They don't understand how democracies work. They know nothing about the history of the United States. I mean, we stopped teaching civics. Reagan's education secretary, Bill Bennett, destroyed civics education, stopped all the federal subsidies for it. So, people just they don't understand what's going on, and they don't pay, and like I said, they don't pay attention to the news. And even when they do pay attention to the news is so sanitized and so broken into bite-sized pieces that most people don't understand really what's going on unless they're listening to the Dean Obeidallah show.
Or Thom Hartmann or any on our channel. And
There
you
you go.
mentioned the court jesters tell the truth. Well, look, we just had on Saturday the White House Correspondents Association, and they canceled the comedian Amber
That's right.
Ruffin weeks
That's
before the jester because Trump administration literally put out a statement saying she's anti-Trump, and they got rid of her. And I don't know if you followed. I was on MSNBC doing the live coverage of it, and with Eamon Mohadine and my friend Jason Selvig and some other
yeah.
people.
I
But
didn't hear it. I didn't
they
didn't tune.
gave an award. They gave an award to a writer from Axios whose article was about the cover up by the media of Joe Biden's dementia. And he used the term cover up, which is a right wing loaded word about
Yeah.
this. And they did that to make Trump happy. I mean, let's be blunt. That's why they did that. It jumped out at me the minute I'm like, you're going to have a guy who called it a cover up. Who was involved in the cover up? Was it the vice president? Was it Kamala Harris? No, they just want to say this bullshit. Did Joe Biden have cognitive decline? Yes. So does Donald Trump have cognitive decline. Is there a cover up? I don't. Where's the cover up?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
distressing.
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know what Eugene Daniels is thinking these days, but
Well,
everybody's scared for their jobs in the media
uh,
right now, and most of those people who are playing at a senior level in the media, they're not like you and me. They're making millions of dollars a year, and I mean, if you're on network television regularly, you're probably starting out at around $1 million a year, and which is an absolute screaming, flaming fortune compared to what people on radio make, and
yeah, it's
listeners.
we know.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
my friend Thom, thank you for spending time. I know you did 3 hours of radio today. Please go to Tom's Substack. It's completely free, just like mine, the Dean's Report. But Tom's is hartmanreport.com. Go to hartmanreport.com, sign up. Tell Tom you heard him on the Dean Obeidallah show and you're signing up for his newsletter. And again, it's free. And I don't ask for any money either. I'm really grateful when someone wants to give me $5 a month for my
Yeah,
articles, but I write them because I love writing them. And I'm also delusional because I believe by writing articles and talking about it on the show, I might change things. I'm
yeah,
still
same here.
delusional. I'm not going to give up on my delusion. I'm Peter
Oh, I
Pan.
don't think that's a
I'm
delusion
okay.
at all. I think it's true.
That's it. All right, Tom. Have a great night, my friend. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
being with us
Thanks
today.
a lot for having me,
Take
Dean.